Hello everybody and welcome back to another Oscar prediction video where today I will be taking a look at the category of Best Film Editing. Now, this category is, I feel like I say this every video, but this really is an interesting category. If you look at the history of Best Film Editing, the past couple of years there have been some upsets and there have been some very tight races. Usually, editing is not an award for which there is always a unanimous frontrunner. And I think that does make a certain amount of sense, because editing is probably the hardest aspect of filmmaking to judge. Most of the time, if the editor is doing a really, really good job, you don't notice. Like, the best editing is often the most invisible editing. However, this particular year, I think there is an obvious frontrunner in this category, and some people don't think that, but uh, well, as I'll get to, I am very, very confident about my prediction, even if some others might say there's hesitation. So let's just jump right into it. Fifth most likely to win is Tar. So, Tar was edited by Monica Willi. This is her first nomination. She's previously known for doing films such as Amour and The White Ribbon. And this nomination was certainly a surprise for a lot of people. The editing in this film is not bad, certainly, but is very subtle, and the movie overall is slower paced than I believe the other four nominees in this category. So it definitely came as a surprise. And again, it's good work, but it's it's some of the most subtle work that of any of the nominees this year. There's a couple of big editing moments, like the cut to Blanchett in the shot I have below, but there are a lot of slower paced scenes, and there are a lot of long, uninterrupted shots. So for that reason, I can't imagine the film winning in this category. I don't know how popular the film is overall, and I don't know how far it can go in terms of other categories, but it really does feel like this nomination is just a show of support for the movie in general, and I can't see a world in which it wins. Fourth most likely to win is The Banshees of Inisherin. So, this is Mikkel E.G. Nielsen's second nomination. He previously won for Sound of Metal. He's actually the only nominee in this category to have been nominated for an Oscar prior, which is pretty wild. Uh, and like Tar, this is a nomination that a lot of people were surprised by, and it's very subtle. The movie is not as slow paced as Tar is, which is why I have it a little bit higher. But okay, here's the thing: the movie is paced well, never drags, but you just don't think about the editing while you're watching the movie, which means the editor is doing his job. So I certainly see the value and the merit of nominating this editing, but I just worry compared to the top three. It's interesting that the bottom two in this category are very subtle, non showy, invisible editing, and the top three are all much showier. And true, Mikkel H. Nelson has won previously for Sound of Metal, which was also more subtle work, but I think that the editing in that movie was more integral to the finished product, and so I'm I'm gonna say that this is in fourth place. I don't think this has a very good chance of winning. Third most likely to win is Elvis. So this film was edited by Jonathan Redmond and Matt Villa, who were both on their first nomination, and they've both worked with Baz Luhrmann before on The Great Gatsby. So the work in this film is not exactly subtle. It is very flashy. There's a lot of split screen, there's a lot of quick cuts moving through scenes very, very quickly, as is the style of Baz Luhrmann. And I'm not going to say it's bad work, although there are definitely some people who would say it's bad work, but it's certainly very, very flashy. And I think back to something like Bohemian Rhapsody that also had very, very flashy editing and arguably not very good editing, especially in that one diner sequence, but that movie still won. And I don't think it's impossible that Elvis could win because it is a Best Picture nominee and it's very, very, very flashy, but it hasn't won any precursors as of this point. and I just don't know. It might possibly win the ACE Eddie Award for drama, but even if it does, I just don't think it's going to be enough. It's kind of insane that there is another movie in this category that's somehow flashier editing than Elvis. Um, and even though the editing in this movie is very flashy and does call a lot of attention to itself, I don't know if the quality is there, which sounds weird to say because Bohemian Rhapsody won. So I don't know. I think it's not impossible. It's a solid number three, but I don't think it's going to happen, mainly because of the competition. Second most likely to win is Top Gun Maverick. So this film is edited by Eddie Hamilton. This is his first nomination, but he's previously done some big action movies like Kingsman: The Secret Service and Mission Impossible: Fallout. So congratulations to Eddie Hamilton on his first nomination, and the work, it's not bad work. The movie does flow very nicely, it does fly, and there's all these scenes of the characters sitting in the cockpits that have to be I mean, the work done on capturing that was very, very tricky. But I, here's the thing: a lot of people have said that this is the frontrunner. Gold Derby has this ranked number one as the frontrunner, and yet it's not that the editing in the film is bad. And I think in another year this would be a more deserving winner. But if you actually look at what this has won in terms of the precursors, it's only won two things. Like it won Saturn and it won Washington Film Critics Association. Like that's it. And there's a certain other movie in this category that has won much much more. And because this is kind of an interesting conversation, I feel like I shouldn't hold back any longer. Uh, the film that I believe is number one most likely to win is Everything Everywhere All at Once. So, this film was edited by Paul Rogers, again, his first nomination. Surprisingly, he actually doesn't have that much big stuff under his belt, with the exception of the Daniel Scheinert film, The Death of Dick Long. This is a movie, first and foremost, it's won by far the most precursors, 21 precursors. So it is a little ridiculous that people wouldn't think this is the frontrunner. It's won the Critics' Choice Award and it won the BAFTA Award, which is very, very significant because BAFTA shut the movie out everywhere else. This is the only thing it won. They didn't even give Ke Huy Quan supporting actor, but the one thing that it won for was editing. And let's be honest, it's easy to see why. The whole reason the movie works is because of the editing, because they have to show all of these different storylines and cut back and forth between them in a way that resonates in an emotional way and isn't too difficult to follow. And some of the stuff that they do with juxtaposing the more surreal, goofy things in the film with the more genuine, emotional stuff in the film, like some of these images shouldn't work together when they're edited together in quick succession, but they do. And the fact that they're able to keep all of these storylines straight and the movie remains semi incoherent based on who you ask, like, I normally am not one for hyperbole, but this movie is the reason why the Oscars have a category for rewarding editing. And it's absolutely mind blowing that there's people who don't think that this is going to win. Because if you look at the precursors and if you look at the film itself, it's so clear. And okay, the big thing that people are pointing to is the sound stat. So for the past 9 years, I think, since 2013, uh, the movie that wins Best Film Editing also wins one of the sound categories. Uh, and so that would suggest that Top Gun Maverick would win because it's also the frontrunner to win sound. Or is it? Because I've started to wonder recently if All Quiet on the Western Front could upset that. And while I appreciate that the sound stat, like, it's an impressive stat, but stats only matter until they don't. And if you look before the sound stat, Argo wins editing in 2012. Doesn't win sound. A bunch of other movies win sound because there's a tie, but Argo is not one of them. Then the year before that, Girl with the Dragon Tattoo wins editing, and Hugo wins sound. And the year before that, Social Network wins editing, and Inception wins sound. Like, it's not that big of a stat. Sometimes it happens. A lot of times there is correlation. People are like, oh, but Sound of Metal won. And like, that's really subtle editing. There's no reason why that should win. There is definitely reason why that should win. I predicted it. Sound of Metal won because the way that that editing works with the sound is super integral to that movie, and when sound is playing and when sound isn't. And I'm sorry, I just don't know how anyone is not voting for Everything Everywhere in this category, especially considering how loved the movie is overall. 11 nominations and so many important precursor wins. I I know this is technically me predicting an upset. As I'm recording this, ACE has not happened yet, but because they divide it into drama editing and comedy editing, I think Everything Everywhere should have no problem winning the comedy editing award. And assuming Top Gun wins drama editing, people will still say that's the frontrunner, but I'm sorry, I don't think that's going to happen. The evidence is not there to back it up. Stats only matter until they don't. You know what? It was already embarrassing enough when the Academy gave Bohemian Rhapsody this award. If they don't give this award to Everything Everywhere, then why even still bother with this category? Clearly, they don't know what they're doing. But I'm going to choose to have faith in the Academy and that the obvious but integral editing of Everything Everywhere wins. And you know what's really crazy? This movie was edited on Adobe Premiere Pro, which is like the same software I use to edit the short films I made. So it's got that underdog narrative to it as well. Like, I don't see a world in which Everything Everywhere loses this, even if it's the only thing it wins in the whole show. Like, I know I said earlier Ke Huy Quan was the most sure win, but he lost BAFTA shockingly, and I still think he's going to win, but I'm also very, very confident that the editing is going to win. Okay, so thank you very much for watching, and make sure to tune in next time where I will take a look at the category of Best Production Design. See you then.